I knew Trevor was going to be a problem the minute he used the phrase synergize the risk stream in a meeting about fraud prevention. The kid rolled in like a walking LinkedIn post, tight pants, whiter than white teeth, and enough startup jargon to choke a Tesla. Said he was the new acting chairman, which really meant my daddy died, and now I get to play boss while the ink's still drying on the will. Meanwhile, been quietly babysitting the thing that actually kept this bank alive, the risk engine. My risk engine. 9 years of sleepless nights and bad coffee, tuning that thing like a damn violin. It flagged card scams before they were charged, flagged phishing sites before customers clicked, flagged internal transfers that just didn't smell right. It was a symphony of paranoia, and I was its ghost composer. But ghosts don't get bonuses, or thank yous, or lunch invites. Just get results. That was fine by me. I don't need a plaque. I just need the system to sing. What set Trevor off, I think, was that no one clapped when he replaced the espresso machine. He wanted fireworks, applause. I gave him a report on anomalous international wire attempts in Q2. You'd think I handed him a bucket of mold. He smirked, tapped the paper, and said, "This is dense." I told him fraud tends to be that way. He didn't like that. I could smell it coming, the reshuffling, the performance reviews, the new titles with no meaning. HR started scheduling engagement chats. I got CC'd on threads I used to lead, the kind of things that make you laugh and vomit at the same time. But still, I didn't flinch, because my engine still worked. They could change the chairs. I ran the air. Now might be a good moment to say, if you like stories where things go real sideways for smug execs in expensive suits, give this story a like and hit that little subscribe button. I don't show up in your feed unless you do, and the team here, who helps me piece this chaos together, gets a real boost from it. Now, back to the implosion. Trevor's first real power move was inviting a bunch of external consultants to audit legacy systems. Showed up in matching vests with disrupt tech logos and smug attitudes. One of them asked me point blank, "So where's the dashboard that shows what your system is doing in real time?" I raised one eyebrow and said, "If you could see it in real time, so could the fraudsters." He blinked like a frog in traffic. Trevor laughed. "Erin's old school. She likes code more than clarity." I wanted to respond. Really, I did, but I just nodded, let him have his jab, because I knew something he didn't. The system wasn't just old school, it was alive, it learned, and it didn't like being mocked. The first real warning came on a Thursday, a tiny anomaly, a glitch in a routine hourly check, one that usually ran silent, self-correcting, nothing to flag. But that day, it hesitated, just a millisecond longer than it should have. That hesitation meant someone had touched something they didn't understand. I didn't report it. I just watched. 2 days later, Trevor presented a Vision 2026 slide deck to the board. I sat at the back, arms folded. One of the slides literally said, "Replace all legacy systems with AI-based fraud detection within 90 days. No source, no testing, just bold fonts and bullshit. The chairman's widow looked confused. Does that include Erin's system? Trevor chuckled. Especially Erin's system. Nobody looked at me. That night, I poured myself a glass of wine, logged in one last time, and began the process I'd built 9 years ago for a scenario I never thought I'd need. Full system autonomy. In exactly 10 days, if no proper handoff was completed, if no override authentication was performed with the correct dual-key protocol, the system would stop trusting its own handlers. It wouldn't shut down. It would go quiet. No alerts, no flags, no warnings. And in silence, the fraud would walk right in. Monday morning hit like a branding exercise. New mission statement posters everywhere, same recycled fonts, agile, transparent, disruptive. They looked like something a sixth grader made in Canva after 3 Red Bulls. Trevor strutted through the halls with a Bluetooth headset that wasn't even connected to anything, just a prop so he could ignore people while pretending to take fake calls. And trailing behind him, the Disrupt Tech Brigade, eyes with sockless loafers and teeth so white they could signal aircraft. One even wore a turtleneck in July, in DC. The old guard started disappearing like it was a magic trick. Janice from compliance, gone. Early retirement package. Roy from systems integration, vanished. Relocation opportunity. None of them even got a goodbye cake. Just cardboard boxes and nervous smiles. Trevor didn't fire them directly, of course, just created enough smoke that people couldn't breathe. He wanted fresh blood, but not for innovation, just so he'd be the smartest guy in a room full of people who didn't know the building used to catch fire every Q4 if you didn't manually cool the servers. He didn't want guardians. He wanted cheerleaders. Then came the meeting that sealed it. Conference room C, 12 chairs, 2 carafes of untouched coffee. 1 chair left empty, intentionally, one where I usually sat. Trevor was at the head, flanked by 2 of his new fintech acolytes. "We're streamlining," he said, clicking to a slide that just said legacy not equal to agility. That equals sign with the slash through it made my teeth hurt. "Some of the existing infrastructure," he said, pausing for emphasis, "while admirable in its time, is now an anchor. It slows us. It limits us. It needs to be reevaluated." He didn't look at me. He looked at the interns. "Wanted an audience." "Take Aaron's fraud engine," he said with a theatrical shrug. "It's brilliant, but it's dense, obscure, a black box. We need visibility and speed and AI." I opened my mouth, closed it, picked up my pen, clicked it once. Just once. The sound echoed. That was all I gave him. He kept going. "We've partnered with Sentinel Byte. They're building a plug-and-play fraud module. It runs in the cloud, updates itself, has a dashboard with real-time reporting." Imagine that. Transparency. No more code-based voodoo. Someone laughed. Probably the intern who'd accidentally sent a customer 10 grand last week and didn't notice until the client called. I waited, breathed, picked up the printout I brought, slid it across the table. "Page 3, I said quietly. "That black box you're replacing caught 137 credential stuffing attacks in the last quarter alone. Sentinel Byte module flagged 2. Trevor blinked. Of which, I continued, both were false positives. One was a password reset, the other was someone's grandma logging in from an iPad. Silence. Then came the smirk, the lean back and chair smugness. "This isn't about what worked in 2018. It's about what scales. This is about culture and agility." I stared at him like he was a raccoon in a business suit. Later that afternoon, I got the HR ping. "Hi, Aaron. Hope you're well. Quick thing, can you document your current risk workflows, pipeline logic, and system access map? Just for redundancy. Totally standard." Standard, my ass. I'd written up that protocol 7 years ago. It hadn't changed. They already had the documentation. They just wanted a fresh copy, one they could dissect, sanitize, dumb down for whatever cloud toy they were pinning their hopes on. So I gave them what they asked for. I documented everything, but I left out one tiny element. One protocol buried under a cascade of variables, a heartbeat. If someone touched the wrong file, if someone failed the handshake more than once, if the right key wasn't used, nothing would break. It would just stop listening. The silence would be invisible, just like me. I started noticing things after that. The new hires always met in conference rooms with the blinds down. Trevor kept slipping into late-night Zoom calls with some investment fund I didn't recognize. And the IT logs? Suddenly locked. Access denied even to me. My name stripped from the admin list. They weren't modernizing, they were gutting. And they thought I wouldn't notice. Trevor didn't want security, he wanted obedience. He wanted to build a castle, not guard the vault. Fine, let him build it. I already knew where the cracks were. Friday mornings used to be sacred, quiet time before the weekly churn, before the finance guys showed up with their spreadsheets, and the interns ruined the coffee. I used to sip tea and run diagnostics, checking that every circuit of the risk engine was still humming like a paranoid little beast. It was the one part of the week where everything made sense. But that Friday, the air felt heavy. The kind of heavy that presses on your lungs and whispers, something's about to rot. Meeting was called Strategic Horizon Session, which is code for corporate throat clearing before a massacre. Trevor was already seated when I walked in, wearing one of those blazers that looks like it costs a lot, but still makes him look like a magician at a gender reveal party. The slide deck was up. Title, Modernization Milestones. I took my usual seat, back row, left side, close to the power outlet. The seat where ghosts sit. The others shuffled in slowly. Some new analysts, a couple old-timers trying not to look nervous. No one made eye contact with me. Red flag number 1. Trevor started with a joke. I don't remember it. Something about AI and interns. It bombed. Then he launched into his usual pitch, how legacy systems were barriers to scale, how nimble teams win markets, how the customer journey demands velocity. Buzzword bingo. I could barely hear it over the thump of my own pulse. Then he paused, looked right at me for the first time in weeks. "You know," he said with this faux charming grin, "when I think about Erin, I think, damn, she makes me feel old." Laughter, forced, uneasy. The room felt like a funeral for common sense. He kept going. "But that's the point, right? Evolution. Change. Letting go of comfort to make room for innovation. He clicked to the next slide. Bullet point blinked on screen. Departmental streamlining. Risk tech redundancy. My name wasn't on the slide. But everyone knew. He didn't say fired. He said transition plan. He said operational pivot. He said realigning technical resources with our future roadmap. What he meant was, errands done here. No gold watch, no handshake, just corporate euthanasia wrapped in TED talk garbage. I didn't say a word, didn't flinch. I stood up and plugged my laptop from the dock, slid it into my bag. The chair scraped against the carpet louder than any voice in the room. Trevor looked smug. He expected me to beg or cry or yell. Instead, I smiled, a slow, small smile. The kind you give right before pushing the big red button. You've got 10 minutes, I said softly, before the heart stops ticking. And then I walked out. No one followed. No one breathed. I think one of the analysts might have thrown up after I left. Here's what Trevor didn't understand. The risk engine wasn't just software. It was ritual. Every week, every line of code tuned like a violin string. There were things in that system no manual could explain. Not because I was trying to be cryptic, but because some things only live when they're watched. He wanted me to document it? Fine. I gave them the plumbing, but I didn't give them the pulse. There's a function, buried 17 layers deep. Looks like gibberish. 5 lines of code, dormant unless triggered by a very specific pattern. That pattern, me logging out without triggering the dual auth rekey. What does the code do? Nothing, and that's the point. No alerts, no red flags, no outbound pings to insurance. No scam detection emails. It doesn't crash, it just goes quiet. Like a dog that stops barking when the thief finally opens the back door. That afternoon, got a call from Janice, the former compliance lead they'd pushed out 3 months earlier. Was that you? She asked. I didn't lie. I just stood up, I said, but the truth? I'd been standing up for years. That Friday was just when I let go of the leash. Monday started with a lie. The dashboard said everything was fine. No spikes, no alerts, no flagged accounts. Like a security camera showing a parking lot right before a robbery. Too calm, too clean. Except it wasn't. By 10:17 a.m., customer service flagged 3 back-to-back complaints. Unauthorized transaction. I never bought this. Who charged my card for a Romanian pet supply site? By noon, it was a dozen. By 3 p.m., 42. But the fraud system? Silent. No anomaly alerts. No location mismatches. No velocity flags. Just a green light blinking like an idiot in an empty room. Trevor didn't even notice. Was busy doing a fireside chat with some fintech podcast called Disrupt the Norm. He was mid-sentence. We're ushering in a new era of clarity and innovation when the chargeback report hit his inbox. He skimmed it, frowned, waved it off. Probably old refund trails catching up. Legacy junk, we're cleaning it out. Legacy junk. He used that phrase again at Tuesday's check-in when the issue escalated to Tier 3 support. IT was scrambling, blaming a data refresh bug in the new Sentinel Byte integration. Their new cloud vendor claimed they couldn't replicate the issue in the sandbox environment. Trevor just laughed. It's 2025. Bugs are part of progress. We're shedding dead skin. Don't panic. Dead skin. That's how he thought of the system that saved the bank from collapsing during the 2017 card skimming surge. That flagged a rogue employee siphoning internal accounts in 2019. Auto-reversed $180,000 in a whale client wire fraud in 2021 before the customer even knew it happened. And now it was just dead skin. In Virginia, I was in my garden, tomatoes, raspberries, mint. The ground still held warmth from last week's sun, and the crows hadn't figured out my scarecrow was just a Home Depot apron on a mop stick. My phone buzzed, not my work phone. That one was off, buried in a drawer under an old Altoids tin and a photo of my dog who died in 2016. No, this was my real phone, my personal one, and the buzz wasn't a call, it was a push notification. From Canary, the private monitoring app I built 6 years ago, a back channel tethered to a heartbeat protocol buried in the Risk engine. Not real-time data, not logs, just status pulses, like a lighthouse flashing every 15 minutes. Or going dark. Last pulse had been at 8:45 a.m. Monday, the one after that, never came. I stared at the notification. Alert, Canary heartbeat missed. Engine status, null. That meant the core logic was intact but blind. Someone had overwritten the telemetry layer. But they hadn't noticed the backup tracer I'd hidden 3 folders deep under a decoy labeled Old Monthly Metrics 2019 Final V2. XLSX. And if they hadn't seen that, they hadn't noticed what else was buried underneath. I smiled, not a big one, just a twitch at the corner of my mouth. The kind that happens when you know the second domino's about to fall, and the guy who pushed the first one still thinks it's a game. That afternoon, I got a call from Roy, the systems guy they restructured last winter. "Hey," he said, voice tight. "You hear what's going on?" "Not really," I said, plucking a worm off a kale leaf. "I'm off-grid," he laughed. "Bitter sound? They're blaming your code." Of course they were. They said it's too encrypted. No one can find the root logging node. "That's because there isn't one," I said. Silence. "I mean," I added, "not for them." He didn't push. He just said, "It's starting. You feel it?" "I feel it," I said, watching a crow land on the edge of my fence. "But I'm not worried." Trevor was still posting culture quotes on the company Slack channel. He didn't know what silence meant yet, but he would. By Thursday, the damage had smell. The kind of financial stink that doesn't show up in numbers right away, but you can feel it in how people talk, or more accurately, how they don't. The Risk Ops Slack channel went quiet. No gifs, no lunch messages, just awkward timestamps and radio silence like a morgue had been installed between memes. Then the cyber insurance carrier sent a notice. Not a phone call, not a polite email. A flagged alert. Subject line: urgent. Threshold violation detection protocols missing inside. Cold language, barely disguised panic. Our systems detected a significant lapse in fraud prevention parameters, previously benchmarked under policy ID 3 to 681RX. Detection thresholds for transaction velocity, geolocation drift, and synthetic ID patterns have returned null. These confirm within 24 hours that an alternative fraud engine is active and compliant with Clause 7.2.3 of your coverage. Translation: your shield is down. Prove you've got a new one or we yank your policy. The email hit every executive's inbox, but only one person actually understood what it meant. And I was gone. In the boardroom, chaos simmered under designer cologne and denial. Alan Kremer, the oldest board member, retired Marine, still wore cufflinks with the bank's founding date, held the printed notice in one liver-spotted hand. "Didn't Aaron build this damn thing?" he asked flatly, voice like gravel in a blender. "Why the hell isn't it working?" Trevor gave a politician's smile. "Too many teeth, too much spin. We're in transition, Alan. It's a short-term integration delay. The Sentinel Byte module is learning on the fly. There's bound to be a few hiccups." Alan didn't blink. Hiccup doesn't take down detection thresholds. A hiccup doesn't trigger Clause 7.2.3. Trevor turned to the Sentinel Byte rep sitting in the corner like an unwanted houseguest. The guy, a man bun in a blazer, gave a noncommittal shrug. "Well," the rep said, "our product assumes a parallel legacy layer during the first 90 days. We, expected the previous system to still be feeding confidence metrics until at least Q2." Trevor's voice snapped. "No one told me that. I could have told him. In fact, I did. In an exit email titled System Handoff Dependencies, which he never opened. How do I know? Canary tracks that too. Anyway, back to the boardroom." Alan folded the paper, slowly, deliberately. "Remind me again who approved this switch." "I did," Trevor said, straightening his tie like it was a superhero cape. "We're future-proofing." Aaron's model wasn't scalable. It was hand-coded, hard to interpret, didn't play well with modern interfaces. "It didn't play well," Alan said, "because it wasn't playing. It was winning. That one landed." Trevor coughed, then pivoted. "We've got a new AI vendor. Adaptive, explainable, cloud-native. Buzzword salad, extra dressing." But behind the scenes, things were unspooling fast. Chargebacks had tripled. The call center was swamped. One client, an import-export firm with a 7-figure balance, froze all operations after 3 ghost wires slipped through undetected. The system didn't block them, didn't even blink. The fraudster didn't have to break in. The doors were wide open and nobody manned the guard booth. And still, Trevor refused to admit the engine was dead. Instead, he doubled down. Sent an all-staff email titled Embracing Transformation. He wrote, "Disruption is uncomfortable, but necessary. As we move forward, remember that innovation sometimes means stepping away from the familiar, even if the familiar once worked." Translation: ignore the smoke, trust the rebrand. I was sitting in a folding chair on my back porch when I read it, bare feet up on the rail, a chipped ceramic mug in one hand, a tablet in the other, watching Canary's diagnostic traces flatline. One by one. Heartbeat, null, source logs. Null, flag queue, empty. I tapped a button. Triggered the contingency tracker. 30 minutes later, the Sentinel Byte module pinged my back channel. They tripped the logic gate I built for vendor overrides. thinking it was a harmless optimization script. The engine saw it and did nothing, because Trevor still hadn't used the dual-key authentication to assume control. That meant, legally and programmatically, no one was in charge of the system. It was alive, but listening to no one. And Trevor, he was still too proud, too blind, too busy polishing his fake throne to realize the crown was melting. But the board was starting to smell smoke. It happened at 3:14 a.m. Eastern, while Trevor was asleep in his high-rise condo, dreaming of stock options and magazine features. Someone walked through the front door of the bank's digital fortress and didn't even wipe their feet. No alarms, no red lights. Just a smooth, silent siphon of $3.2 million, transferred across 5 shell accounts, layered through fake payrolls, bounced into dummy vendors, and evaporated into offshore nothing. The next morning, the Sentinel Byte dashboard still showed all systems nominal. That's when the FBI called. Not a knock, not a warrant, a phone call, straight to the bank's main line from a fraud unit liaison. "Hey," the agent said, dry and surgical. "You guys seeing the same movement we're seeing? Because we've got funds tied to the Kalvik ring, hit a flagless route through your network at 0314. It's in public routing logs. Should have been stopped by your anomaly filters." Pause, longer pause. "Do you still have anomaly filters?" Trevor was eating a $19 acai bowl when the call came through. His assistant tried to buffer him. "I can take a message," but the agent didn't play. "Tell him I'll call again in 5 minutes. If he doesn't answer, file a voluntary disclosure request under Title 12. The bowl went in the trash. What followed was a 5-alarm sprint through digital hell. Compliance ran half-blind through archived logs. Engineering ripped into code bases they didn't write and barely understood. Sentinel Byte's team kept saying things like, "We'll open a ticket," and that's not expected behavior, while quietly sending lawyers into damage control mode. And still, no answers. That's when a junior engineer, Marcus NG, 2 months out of college, still wearing his onboarding lanyard, found something strange. He wasn't even supposed to be touching the core logs. But in a panic, someone had given him admin credentials, thinking fresh eyes might help. Buried in an old system directory mislabeled as archived tests do not use, he found a function tagged with a comment. Hash override auth required, Aaron 2018. It didn't look like much, just a redirect script tied to the authorization handshake Trevor never completed. But Marcus followed the chain, tracing it through buried dependencies, all the way down to the core anomaly engine. And then he saw it. Every flagged transaction, every protocol alert, every fraud marker was hitting a logic gate labeled "Suspend Unauthorized Override." In short, the system was still running. It just didn't recognize anyone in charge. No override, no trust, no action, like a fire alarm that checks your ID before it starts screaming. Marcus forwarded the discovery up the chain. It landed on Trevor's desk at 10:41 a.m. He read it once, then deleted it, because acknowledging it would mean admitting he didn't understand the system, that he skipped the protocol, that Aaron's legacy junk had more brains than any of his $1 million vendors. Instead, he called an emergency meeting. Title: Narrative Alignment Strategy. I kid you not. While millions were evaporating into untouchable havens, Trevor was workshopping how to explain it away. He practiced words like unforeseen complexity, unoptimized transition, emergent risk vectors. He even floated the idea of pinning it on a rogue contractor. Meanwhile, Alan Kremer, the board's old warhorse, had already looped an outside counsel. He smelled blood and fire. And still, no one could reach me. Tried, of course. I had 17 missed calls from blocked numbers, one from a burner phone I recognized as HR's crisis line. But I didn't answer. I just sat on my porch, sipping coffee, watching birds fight over a crust of bread I tossed out earlier. Because I knew what came next. The system wasn't just flagging the Kalvik breach. It was cataloging it, building a case, a timeline, a reckoning. And when the right person logged in again, someone with proper credentials, it would unpack everything like a crime scene slideshow. But Trevor, he was too busy scrubbing mirrors while the house burned. Internal panic was a virus now. You could see it in the emails, shorter sentences, more CCs, phrases like ASAP and "what's the ETA on this?" clogging up every thread. Someone even tried to call Roy, old systems guy, pushed out last year, begging for insights. He told them to try gardening. Trevor didn't sleep that night. He stayed at the office, pacing, snorting espresso, drafting lies. But the system was already awake, and it remembered everything. The boardroom smelled like fear masked in cologne. Glass walls, leather chairs, one dead plant in the corner that no one dared toss out. It mirrored the vibe perfectly. Trevor stood at the head of the table, blazer wrinkled, tie loosened, eyes twitching with over-caffeinated damage control. He was trying to spin, still, using words like early detection gap and transition turbulence, like this was just a hiccup in a quarterly review. But the room had changed. Gone were the polite nods and passive-aggressive smirks. Now it was cold stares, old eyes, lawyers in the back row. Someone even brought a notary. The breach had hit headlines that morning. Mid-Atlantic Bank fails to flag laundering ring. CNBC was already flashing a graphic that showed $3.2 million circled in red under the headline Silent Heist. AI or human error? The founder's widow hadn't spoken yet, but her jaw had been clenched since 9:00 a.m. Alan Kremer broke the silence first. He slapped a printed spreadsheet on the table, still warm from the fax machine, because Alan refused to read anything on a screen. "This is the audit trail from last quarter," he said, tapping a column. "These flagged patterns, that was Aaron's engine, wasn't it?" Trevor opened his mouth, closed it. Alan kept going. "You fired the person who built the firewall, Trevor. And then what? Hoped a SAW subscription would keep the wolves out." Trevor tried to smile. "We upgraded to A, you downgraded to Visibility Theater," Alan snapped. "You replaced a missile defense system with a light-up dashboard that says all clear in 4 fonts. Someone chuckled, kind of bitter laugh that sounds more like a cough. Then came the kill shot. A former regulator, brought in to assess damage, adjusted her glasses and said calmly, "If you can't prove those accounts were flagged before the breach, you're not just liable, you're exposed. The FDIC will drag this place through federal fire. And if this goes criminal," she let the sentence hang like a guillotine. Trevor finally caved. He reached for his phone and, for the first time since that smug Friday when he booted me out of that boardroom, he typed out a message. "Aaron, we need to talk, please." He watched the screen. 3 dots would have been salvation. A typing bubble, anything. Nothing came. No read receipt. No reply. Just the slow, creeping sweat of a man who'd finally realized he was swimming in concrete. Because while he was flailing in suits and scripts, was watching my tomato plants swell with ripeness in the warm Virginia sun. The breeze was soft, the soil rich. Cardinals chirped like idiots in the trees behind the fence. I held my phone once briefly, saw the message, then flipped its screen down on the porch table and returned to trimming dead basil stems. I'd already said what needed saying. 10 minutes before the heart stops ticking. That was 4 days ago. The Canary app showed the same flat lines. No new logins, no admin keys, no override initiations. Just a long, unbroken silence across all nodes. That meant one thing: no one had dared go back into the engine. They were flying blind, and the system, it was recording, watching, waiting. Because I hadn't just built a fraud detector, I built a memory. It remembered every IP address, every credential, every flag someone chose to ignore, every corner cut, every analyst who clicked dismiss instead of escalate, every time Trevor pretended understanding while deleting audit reports he couldn't pronounce. The engine knew the difference between error and negligence. So did the insurance lawyers. They were circling now, circling the bank like vultures over a dehydrated deer. And the board? They'd begun whispering the phrase that Trevor feared most: leadership transition. By sunset, my garden smelled like summer. Tomato vines heavy, mint thick in the breeze. And somewhere, in a corner office he thought he'd earned by birthright, Trevor was staring at a blinking cursor, wondering how it had all gone so quiet. He thought I was gone, but I was right here, and the silence was mine. He showed up like a traveling salesman selling apologies he didn't know how to pronounce. Black Escalade crunching down my gravel driveway, tires too shiny for country roads, or creaking open to reveal Trevor in a suit that had lost its confidence somewhere around Delaware. His hair, usually shellacked into corporate perfection, was damp with sweat. His tie was gone. His eyes had that caffeinated wildness of someone who hadn't slept or had, but not well. He walked up the porch steps slow, like the boards might bite. "Aaron," he said, with a smile I'd seen him use on investors, interns, and mirrors. "Wow, this place is peaceful." Didn't say a word. "Mind if I come in?" I didn't move. He rubbed the back of his neck. "Okay, look, I'll cut to it. We could really use your insight right now. Just a quick consult, walk us through the last few layers of your logic. Nothing too crazy, no expectations. No expectations, I repeated, still not inviting him inside. Well, guidance. Let's say guidance. Maybe just a review of the handoff structure. The system handshake protocols. Override, I said. His eyes flicked sideways. Right, that. He looked down at my porch boards like he expected them to open up and swallow him. You wanted modern, I said softly. Now you have silence. He didn't laugh. Just stood there sweating in a $900 blazer that smelled like desperation and fabric softener. I gestured toward the side yard. Come on. Let me show you something. Followed me past the cracked birdbath and the wind chimes made of old tools. Past the empty Adirondack chair where I read every morning while the engine hummed in the background of my thoughts like a ghost symphony. To the garden. Rows of tomatoes, basil, lavender, sun-warmed soil under our feet. The kind of place algorithms can't touch. These plants, I said, don't scream when they die. They just wither. Quiet. You only notice if you're watching, if you care. Trevor fidgeted. He wanted to talk tech to claw his way back into the narrative, but I wasn't done. You had something that watched, that listened, that knew when the root system was rotting before the leaves turned yellow. He tried to recover. I was under pressure. The board wanted changes. The industry's evolving, and you wanted credit, not security. That one hit. I saw it in the way he swallowed, hard and fast like someone choking on truth. I reached into the side pocket of my flannel jacket and pulled out the envelope. Cream stock, heavy, sealed, his name typed neatly on the front. He took it like it might bite. Inside, I said, is a notarized clause from my exit paperwork, Section 12B. The override key remains legally mine until June 30th. You signed it. HR missed it. Legal never questioned it. He blinked. But you never said, why would I? He opened the flap, pulled out the paper, scanned it with the frantic rhythm of a man realizing the train already left the station, and he was the one who untied the brakes. You locked us out. No, I said. You did, you just didn't notice. He looked up, eyes wide, mouth twitching like he wanted to ask permission to breathe. What do you want? He finally said. Money, a title, advisory control. We can make room. I don't want a room, I interrupted. I had one. You lit it on fire. He stood there, drowning in the kind you can't wash off with PR. Look, he muttered. They're going to hang this on me. They should. He folded the letter back into the envelope, slower now. The performance was gone. All that was left was the man, the small, frightened one, realizing that legacy systems don't forget, especially not the human ones. I turned away from him, kneeling to pull a weed from under the lavender. The breeze carried mint and smoke and something sharp, like ozone before a storm. Trevor, I said without looking, I'll give you one piece of insight, since that's what you came for. He straightened like a child at a sermon. When a system goes quiet, it's not because it's broken. I glanced back at him. It's because it doesn't trust you. He left without saying another word. I didn't watch him go. Didn't need to, because the system was already reacting. Not to him, to me. The email went out at 7:42 a.m., the subject line as unassuming as a post-it note. System transfer logs legacy clause review. No CC, no apology, no grand finale. Just one clean line of text, a ZIP file of unfiltered truth, and a single recipient. Franklin L. Horvath, retired partner at Dunley and Ashcroft, personal attorney to the late chairman and quiet guardian of the bank's original charter. Franklin hadn't stepped foot in the boardroom since the founder's funeral. He was older now, stooped, slow, his suspenders holding up both his pants and the weight of institutional memory. But when he entered that evening, briefcase in hand, the air changed. The board was already mid-crisis, buzzing over compliance fallout and insurance lawyers breathing down their necks. The door creaked open. He didn't knock. Evening, Franklin said, no smile, no handshake, just the voice of old money that still paid attention. Trevor stood to greet him. Mr. Horvath, good to see you. Sit, Franklin said, not looking at him. He walked to the head of the table, unpacked one folder, and opened it with a rustle that sounded like thunder in a room full of cowards. Earlier today, I received documentation, original logs from the proprietary risk engine, a notarized exit clause, and a time-stamped audit trail detailing a non-compliant override transition. That audit included, among other things, proof that no dual authentication handshake was ever executed. Trevor went pale. We were mid-integration. There was confusion. Franklin didn't blink. Per Fiduciary Clause 7, enacted in the original governance charter, control of critical internal systems reverts to their architect if proper succession isn't fulfilled within a 10-day window. He set the folder down. It wasn't, gasps. A chair scraped. Somewhere, a junior exec swallowed a scream. Franklin continued, calm as a surgeon. Effective immediately, system oversight is reinstated to Miss Erin Shaw. Legal documentation has been shared with federal auditors, and temporary relief has been filed under Protective Clause 11. This protects the bank. Another pause. It does not protect you, Trevor stammered. We can't just, this is irregular, it's binding, Franklin snapped. You signed it. The founder's seal is on it. You remember your father, don't you, Trevor? Silence. Then this board will convene in 48 hours to vote on permanent leadership restructuring. Translation, you're done. No raised voices, no slamming desks. Just an old man with paperwork and a room full of people who suddenly remembered who actually built the kingdom they'd been looting. Trevor tried to speak again, but Franklin was already packing up. Oh, he said, halfway to the door, one last thing. Reached into the case and dropped a single sheet of paper onto the table. This is a flagged transaction report. The system came back online this morning under authorized conditions. First action it took, flagged a reimbursement request. He turned the paper toward the board, filed under Trevor M. Langston, business class airfare, personal travel. He looked at Trevor one last time. Fraud. Trevor slumped. And that was that. The next morning, the offer letter arrived. A reinstatement, a new role, founder and chief of a dedicated fraud subsidiary. My name on the building, my system in its veins, no politics, no branding consultants, just truth in code. I didn't answer right away. Let them sweat for a full hour. Then I walked in through the front doors. The place still smelled like new drywall and old mistakes. Someone handed me a badge. I passed Trevor's portrait on the wall, already gone, just a smudge where the frame had been. Inside my new office, I ran my hand across the console. The system purred back to life, recognizing its owner. I pulled up the latest logs, clean again, sharp. Then, smiling to myself, I muttered under my breath, legacy junk, huh? I tapped one key, flagging another bogus transaction. Good thing it still detects garbage.